Allow our part, dear friends. We bow our heads in humble gratitude to Abdul Baha for enabling us to be here in this holy, this blessed, this snow-white spot, in the presence of the Universal House of Justice, to commemorate the centenary of the ascension of our beloved Master. We turn our thoughts to every heart connected to Abdul Baha throughout the world and say to them in the words of Varga, the martyr, Joye hame khali. The presence of each of you is missed. When the sun of Baha set on that fateful May night in 1892, those moments of inconsolable grief, that period of our history known as the supreme affliction, from that anguish of parting with Baha'u'llah, arose the majestic figure of Abdul Baha, whom Baha'u'llah had by his very own pen designated as the interpreter of his word, as the center of his covenant, thus restoring the light of hope and inaugurating the process that guarantees the realization of the ultimate purpose of Baha'u'llah's revelation, the unification of the entire human race, the establishment of the kingdom of God on earth. The appointment of Abdul Baha as the center of the covenant is as clear as day. In the Kitab-i-Aqdas, the most weighty and sacred of all works of Baha'u'llah, he states, "When the ocean of my presence hath ebbed, and the book of my revelation is ended, turn your faces towards him whom God had purposed, who had branched from this ancient root. O people of the world, when the mystic dove will have winged its flight from its sanctuary of praise and sought its far-off goal, its hidden habitation, refer ye whatsoever ye understand not in the book to him who had branched from this mighty stock." In the Kitab-e-Ahd, the book of Baha'u'llah's covenant, the Blessed Beauty states, "We have bequeathed to our heirs an excellent and priceless heritage. Consider that which we have revealed in our most holy book. When the ocean of my presence hath ebbed, and the book of my revelation is ended, turn your faces towards him who God had purposed, who had branched from this ancient root. The object of this sacred verse is none except the most mighty branch." So it is crystal clear. The Blessed Beauty leaves no room for doubt. He further said, "We have sent him down in the form of a human temple. They who deprive themselves of the shadow of the branch are lost in the wilderness of error, are consumed by the heat of worldly desires, and are of those who will assuredly perish." Friends, whatever any writer or speaker or filmmaker presents to describe Abdul Baha, he remains for now and always the mystery of God. Baha'u'llah himself gave him that title. Even though he is beyond the capacity of our mortal minds, let us reflect on some glimpses of his life, to even for the smallest degree to unravel this mystery of God, this most great favor, this most perfect bounty gifted by Baha'u'llah to mankind. Abdul Baha was born on that never-to-be-forgotten night when the Bab declared his mission to Mullah Hussein in the upper chamber of his house in Shiraz, The 23rd of May, 1844, marked the birth of the Baha'i dispensation, the inauguration of the Baha'i era, and the birth of Abdul Baha. Hence, at the very inception of the Baha'i era, the instrument in the person of Abdul Baha that would ensure its ultimate victory was born to the world. Remember, friends, he was only 9 years old when he heard on the stairs of the Sia Chal the voice of Baha'u'llah instructing that he be taken out immediately. He was permitted to wait in the prison yard until the prisoners were brought out for an hour of fresh air. When Abdul Baha saw his father, his neck bruised and swollen, his back bent with the weight of the chains, he fainted and was carried home unconscious. He recalls the suffering of those days in these words: "In Tehran, we possessed everything at a nightfall, and on the morrow, we were shorn of it all, to the extent that we had no food to eat. I was hungry, but there was no bread to be had. My mother poured some flour into the palm of my hand, and I ate that instead of bread. Yet we were content." He bore along with Baha'u'llah the rigors and miseries of the banishment from Iran to Baghdad through the mountains during the winter cold of 1853. Even as a child, his spiritual perception was extraordinary. He was the first to recognize the manifestation of God. He was the first in the world to believe in him. Not long after their arrival in Baghdad, when Baha'u'llah retreated to the mountains of Sulaymaniyeh, Abdul Baha confided to Nabil his inconsolable grief and narrated that he felt himself to have grown old, even though still a child. While still an adolescent in Baghdad, Abdul Baha wrote an illuminating commentary on the well-known Islamic tradition, winning the admiration of its recipient. Those who attained the presence of Baha'u'llah found in his eldest son attributes and qualities which evoked high praise and admiration. He started to transcribe the tablets of Baha'u'llah while still in his early teens, and this continued until the end of Baha'u'llah's ministry. A trusted follower of Baha'u'llah, who was with him in Baghdad and later in Adrianople and in Akka, has recorded, "The word Agha, the master, was a designation given to Abdul Baha. I recall that one day when Baha'u'llah was in the garden outside the city of Baghdad, someone referred to certain individuals as Agha. On hearing this, Baha'u'llah was heard to say with a commanding voice, 'Who is this Agha? There is only one Agha, and he is the most great branch.' Baha'u'llah repeated this again on another occasion in the Garden of Rizwan in Akka. When Baha'u'llah was further exiled to Constantinople, Abdul Baha was a youth of 19, handsome, agile, and in constant service to Baha'u'llah. By the time he was 24, Baha'u'llah began to rely more and more on his beloved son by appointing him on numerous occasions as his deputy, by assigning him the task of transcribing his tablets, by giving him the responsibility of shielding him from his enemies, and by investing him with the task of watching over the needs of the fellow exiles. On arrival in the prison city of Akka in 1868, it was Abdul Baha who tended to the sick, shielded his father, and faced the scorn of the inhabitants of Akka. He never wavered. His vigil never relaxed. Bahia Khanum shared that in the evenings, Abdul Baha would bring the family together and invite them to recall some humorous event, and everybody would laugh. It was through Abdul Baha's unremitting efforts that Badi was able to gain admission to the presence of Baha'u'llah in the prison. And again, it was through Abdul Baha's efforts that the hostility of various governors of Akka was transmuted to admiration. When Baha'u'llah was released from the 9-year confinement in Akka, Abdul Baha was instrumental in ensuring that Baha'u'llah spent the last years of his earthly life in relative peace. After the passing of Baha'u'llah, the community of the greatest name recognized in Abdul Baha its solace, its guide, its mainstay and champion. The birth of the covenant of Baha'u'llah was, in the words of the beloved guardian, baptized with fire. However, this baptism by fire only served to demonstrate its solidity and proclaim its indestructibility. Betrayed by almost all his relatives, chief among them his half-brother, Abdul Baha's grief was so great that despite the triumphs witnessed in the course of his ministry, it left its traces upon him till the end of his life. Abdul Baha describes his suffering during those 4 years in these words: I swear by the ancient beauty, so great is my sorrow and regret that my pen is paralyzed between my fingers. Thou seest me, submerged in an ocean of calamities that overwhelm the soul, of afflictions that oppress the heart. Sore trials have compassed me round, and perils have from all sides beset me. Yes, Abdul Baha suffered greatly. However, he demonstrates to us the indestructibility of the covenant in these words. He explains that the tests of every dispensation are in proportion to the greatness of the cause. And as the covenant is without parallel and unique to the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, the tests it faces are proportionately more severe. He further explains that those who are weak in faith waver. However, the firm remain steadfast. He refers to those who violate the covenant as the foam of the ocean. The foam is an inseparable part of the ocean. And in his own words, this foam of the ocean shall not endure, and shall soon disperse and vanish, while the ocean of the covenant shall eternally surge and roar. And on another occasion, referring to the actions of those who oppose the covenant. But this action of theirs is of no consequence. It is a mirage and not water, foam and not sea, mist and not cloud, illusion and not reality. Despite the enormous difficulties caused by his immediate family and those who joined hands with them, Abdul Baha continued to labor tirelessly. Not for a moment did he rest, nor did he allow their machinations to distract him from his service to Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah had entrusted Abdul Baha with the most difficult task of the transfer of the remains of the Bab from Tehran to Mount Carmel. Abdul Baha himself describes the safe transfer of the remains, the construction of a befitting mausoleum, and the final interment with his own hands in their permanent resting place was one of his paramount duties. We know the story of how he overcame the challenges to purchase the piece of land that would serve as an access route to the site. At one point of the negotiations, there seemed to be no solution. Abdul Baha said, "One night, I was so hemmed in by my anxieties that I had no other recourse than to recite and repeat over and over again a prayer of the Bab which I had in my possession, the recital of which greatly calmed me." He later spoke of what eventuated. The next morning, the owner of the plot himself came to me, apologized, and begged me to purchase that property. During this especially difficult time, only a year after the passing of Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, in a verse he revealed, foreshadowed the establishment of the cause in the North American continent. It was Abdul Baha himself who testified that the establishment of his father's faith in North America is ranked as the most outstanding objective of his ministry. He subsequently addressed to the American Baha'i community his tablets of the divine plan, investing America with spiritual primacy and singling it out for the world mission of planting the banner of the faith in all continents, countries, and islands of the globe. Right from the early years of his ministry, letters poured in from the East and the West. His days are described in these words: "Comfort and peace had become impossible. The few hours of rest and relaxation that had previously been available to him now became completely out of the question." During these times, Abdul Baha wrote to one of the believers, "It is dawn, and the fingertips, the eyes, the back, the knees, and arms, even every strand of hair, are so exhausted and weary as to be beyond description. From sunset till now, this pen has been in motion, and therefore consider and judge with fairness the intensity of love with which Abdul Baha's heart is connected with those of the friends of God. Thus, if there has been a delay in response, or if the handwriting resembles the intertwined strands of curly hair, it is not my fault, but the fault of the overly long and darksome night." At this time of the commemoration of his passing, when we are collectively calling Abdul Baha to mind, perhaps we can spend a few minutes to look at the relationship between Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha. In one of his tablets, Baha'u'llah refers to Abdul Baha as, "O thou who art the apple of mine eye." In a prayer revealed in Abdul Baha's honor, Baha'u'llah supplicates, "Thou knowest, O my God, that I desire for him not except that which thou dost desire, and have chosen for him no purpose save that which thou hast intended for him. Render him victorious, therefore, through thy hosts of earth and heaven." In the tablet of the land of Ba, revealed on the occasion of Abdul Baha's departure from Akka to Beirut, Baha'u'llah thus describes his separation from his beloved son: "Praise be to him who hath honored the land of Ba through the presence of him around whom all names revolve. From behind the gate of the prison city there hath appeared, and above its horizon there hath shone forth the orb of the beauty of the great, the most mighty branch of God, his ancient and immutable mystery, proceeding on its way to another land. Sorrow, therefore, had enveloped this prison city, whilst another land rejoiceth. And further on in the same tablet, blessed, doubly blessed is the ground which his footsteps have trodden, the eye that had been cheered by the beauty of his countenance, the ear that had been honored by hearkening to his call. And Baha'u'llah concludes with these poignant words: "We beseech God, blessed and exalted is he, that he may honor us with meeting him soon." There are several accounts that reflect the deep love Baha'u'llah had for his son. One of the distinguished early believers has written in his memoirs, describing a visit by Baha'u'llah to the Garden of Junayn. In the afternoon, when Abdul Baha joined the friends in the garden, Baha'u'llah is recorded to have said, "The Master is coming, hasten to attend him." On those days, Baha'u'llah used to sow the seeds of loyalty and servitude toward him whom God had purposed in the hearts of the believers, and explain the lofty station and hidden reality of the Master to all. Attended by everyone, Abdul Baha came with great humility into the presence of the Blessed Beauty. Then the tongue of grandeur uttered words to this effect: "From morning until now, this garden was not pleasant, but with the presence of the Master, it has become truly most delightful." Then turning to the Master, he remarked, "You should have come in the morning." Abdul Baha responded, "The governor of Akka and some residents had requested to meet with me. Therefore, I had to receive and entertain them." Baha'u'llah, with a smiling face, said, "The Master is our shield. Everybody lives here in the utmost comfort and peace. Association with the outside people as these is very, very difficult. It is the Master who stands up to everything and prepares the means of comfort for all the friends. May God protect him from the evil of the envious and the hostile." We recognize that the most great characteristic of Baha'u'llah's revelation is the appointment of the Center of the Covenant. In order to ensure the continued progress of the cause of God, after his ascension, Baha'u'llah ordained the instrument of the covenant and invested it with indisputable authority. Abdul Baha describes the power of the covenant as the pivot of the oneness of mankind, as the heat of the sun that promotes the development of all created things, and that it shall heat every freezing soul, that the light of the covenant is the educator of the minds, the spirits, the hearts, and the souls of men, and shall bestow light upon everything that is dark. That one who resolutely promulgated the covenant, should he be as insignificant as an ant, would be able to drive away the elephant from the arena. Friends, how difficult it is for us to understand Abdul Baha, the center of his covenant, this mystery of God. However, at this moment, when the House of Justice has brought us together to reflect on Abdul Baha, it is helpful for us to look at the words of the beloved guardian. He affirms in the Kitab-e-Aqdas, the Kitab-e-Ahd, and the Surah of Qusn, that these invest Abdul Baha with a power and surround him with a halo which the present generation can never adequately appreciate. He goes on to state, he is and should for all time be regarded, first and foremost, as the center and pivot of Baha'u'llah's peerless and all-enfolding covenant. His most exalted handiwork, the stainless mirror of his light, the perfect exemplar of his teachings, the unerring interpreter of his word, the embodiment of every Baha'i ideal, the incarnation of every Baha'i virtue, the most mighty branch sprung from the ancient root, the being round whom all names revolve, styles and titles that are implicit and find their truest, their highest, and fairest expression in the magic name Abdul Baha. He is, above and beyond these appellations, the mystery of God, an expression by which Baha'u'llah himself has chosen to designate him, and which indicates how in the person of Abdul Baha, the incompatible characteristics of human nature and superhuman knowledge and perfection have been blended and are completely harmonized. Abdul Baha describes himself, however, in these words: "My station is the station of servitude, a servitude which is complete, pure, and real, firmly established, enduring, obvious, explicitly revealed, and subject to no interpretation whatever. I am the interpreter of the Word of God, and such is my interpretation." And in another place, Abdul Baha says, "No melody can fill this yearning soul with such joy and rapture as the call of O Abdul Baha, and no sweet accents warbled by the birds of the orchards can thrill my heart with such delight as the dulcet tune of O Abdul Baha. This melody causeth my heart to leap with joy, and these wondrous words fill me with blissful rapture, but only on condition that the name be accompanied by no other epithets of praise, and paired with no other titles. The designation should be Abdul Baha alone, for it to bestow boundless joy upon my heart and soul. This is my qualification and my station. This is my title and my glory. And this indeed is my highest aspiration throughout eternity." It is clear to us that we cannot separate the person of Abdul Baha from his servitude to Baha'u'llah. Abdul Baha exemplified his revelation. On the one hand, he attained the peak of the highest mountain. The height to which he attained is impossible for us to reach. But at the same time, he chose for himself the station of servitude. And this is what we can strive for, to attempt to achieve the valley of servitude. In some ways, it is easy for us to understand why Baha'u'llah called him the mystery of God. He is so lofty and grand, and at the same time, so lowly and humble. We cannot even come close to being that incarnation of every Baha'i virtue. But we have to try to achieve this lowliness, this servitude. How can we strive to follow the perfect exemplar? Not just as individuals, but as families, as institutions, as communities. Abdul Baha answers these very questions in his tablet of visitation, which we know, when recited with lowliness and fervor, will be even as meeting him face to face. In the tablet, we find ourselves standing at his door and beseeching him, saying, "Lowly and tearful, I raise my suppliant hands to thee. Graciously look upon thy servant, humble and lowly at thy door. Lord, he is a poor and lowly servant of thine. Give me thy grace to serve thy loved ones. Strengthen me in my servitude to thee. Help me to be selfless at the heavenly entrance of thy gate. Lord, give me to drink from the chalice of selflessness. With its robe clothe me, and in its ocean immerse me. Make me as dust in the pathway of thy loved ones. Friends, Abdul Baha wishes for us not only service to Baha'u'llah, but desires for us to be in a state of servitude to the Blessed Beauty. And perhaps not just mere selflessness, but a selflessness that is so complete and all-encompassing that we are immersed in the ocean of selflessness, that we become manifestations of selflessness and utter nothingness. From our prayers for protection, we are repeatedly reminded, and they help us to realize that the greatest protection for our soul is the protection from self. To be protected from the promptings of self, that insistent self poses the greatest danger to us. And instead we are urged to strive to become oblivious of self. Today, when there is so much conflict, so much war and suffering, and Abdul Baha reminds us that all this belongs to the material world, our work for the advancement of the cause is completely different. He says, his cause, the cause of Baha'u'llah, belongeth not to the material world. Its only army is the love of God. Its one crusade is against the insistent self. Its victory is to submit and yield, and to be selfless is its everlasting glory. Hence, as the army of God, to strive to achieve lowliness is our ultimate victory. As we reflect on the life of the beloved Master, we see that he endured suffering right from his childhood. He turns to us with these words, O thou who art steadfast in the covenant, now ye as well must certainly become my partners in some slight degree and accept your share of tests and sorrows. But these episodes shall pass away, while that abiding glory and eternal life shall remain unchanged forever. Moreover, these afflictions shall be the cause of great advancement. As we try to follow our perfect exemplar, even to the slightest degree, Abdul Baha tells us that with a look he granted 100,000 hopes. With a glance he healeth 100,000 incurable ills. With a nod he layeth balm on every wound. With a glimpse he freeth the hearts from the shackles of grief. Another worthy response to the covenant is our unshakable pledge to strive for steadfastness and firmness in the covenant. Over and over again in our writings, we are urged to increase our firmness in the covenant. And we know that it is a requirement of our soul that we pray for steadfastness until our very last breath. Baha'u'llah asks us, hast thou not heard that steadfastness is the prime requisite of the mystic path and the means for admittance in his holy court? They that continue steadfast in his way, upon them verily shall the angels descend. Abdul Baha says, today the most important principle of faith is firmness in the covenant, because firmness in the covenant wards off differences. Therefore, you must be firm as mountains. Further, in the tablets of the divine plan, Abdul Baha states that the first condition to attain to the station of an apostle of Baha'u'llah is firmness in the covenant. He says, it is evident that the access of the oneness of the world of humanity is the power of the covenant and nothing else. Therefore, in the beginning, the believers must make their steps firm in the covenant, so that the confirmations of Baha'u'llah may encircle them from all sides. In the tablet of Ahmad, perhaps the prayer we spontaneously turn to in time of difficulty, and friends, which each of you must have recited countless number of times to reach here today. Baha'u'llah says, "Be thou so steadfast in my love that thy heart shall not waver. Even if the swords of the enemy's rain blows upon thee, and all the heavens and the earth arise against thee, be thou as a flame of fire to my enemies, and a river of life eternal to my loved ones, and be not of those who doubt." When we reflect on what it means to be a flame of fire to our enemies, as we are only human, friends, our instinctive response is to think of fire as a destructive force. But then when we look at our perfect exemplar and his response to those who caused him pain and sorrow, we see that another characteristic of fire is to give warmth and light. Friends, during these precious days, as we commemorate this centenary of the ascension of our beloved Master, beloved in a unique and special way to each one of us assembled here, we express our firmness to the covenant and our unquestioned loyalty and absolute obedience to the infallible institutions of the guardianship and the universal house of justice, which lie at the heart of the covenant, brought into being by Baha'u'llah's own pen and perpetuated through the administrative order, from now until the expiration of 1,000 years. Baha'u'llah ordained the institution of the Universal House of Justice in the Kitab-e-Aqdas and conferred upon it the powers necessary for it to discharge its ordained functions. The Master, in his will and testament, explicitly institutes the guardianship and reaffirms and elucidates the authority of the Universal House of Justice, and refers to the believers once again to the book. Unto the most holy book everyone must turn, and all that is not expressly recorded therein must be referred to the Universal House of Justice. And at the very end of the will, he says, all must seek guidance and turn unto the center of the cause and the house of justice. And he that turneth unto whatsoever else is indeed in grievous error. Furthermore, Abdul Baha is reported to have said in a talk, he, Baha'u'llah, has ordained and established the house of justice. This institution is under the protecting power of Baha'u'llah himself. The beloved guardian refers to the Universal House of Justice as the incorruptible inheritance which the founders of the faith have bequeathed to the world. When we reflect on the head of the faith and think of those early believers who attained the presence of the Bab, Baha'u'llah, or Abdul Baha, one of the things they have in common is that they responded instantly to the guidance of the head of the faith. How do we learn to respond as instantly and spontaneously today to the Universal House of Justice? How do we strive to apply the infallible guidance of the House of Justice to the ills and sufferings of mankind? How can every child, junior youth, and family benefit from the guidance that flows from the Supreme Body? In conclusion, friends, those of us present here, teachers of the cause and administrators, each of us a guest of the Universal House of Justice, What an inestimable privilege it is to be present here on the holy mountain, in such close proximity to the two holiest shrines. How do we absorb this priceless gift? How do we take the spirit of the beloved Master back to our villages and cities? The beloved guardian reminds us that Abdul Baha suffered for no less than 70 years. He describes his suffering in these words. He had suffered as no disciple of the faith who had drained the cup of martyrdom had suffered. He had labored as none of its greatest heroes had labored. He had witnessed triumphs such as neither the herald of the faith nor its author had ever witnessed. Abdul Baha, in the last months of his earthly life, said to us, "O ye beloved of God, these are the days for steadfastness, for firmness and perseverance in the cause of God. The friends of God must arise with such steadfastness that if at any moment 100 souls like Abdul Baha become the target for the arrows of affliction, they will not shift or waver in their resolve, their determination, their enkindlement, their devotion and service to the cause of God. O ye lovers of God, this verily is my last wish and my admonition unto you." Closer to the time of his passing, he said, "Friends, the time is coming when I shall no longer be with you. I have done all that could be done. I have served the cause of Baha'u'llah to the utmost of my ability. I have labored night and day all the years of my life. Oh, how I long to see the believers shouldering the responsibility of the cause. My days are numbered, and save this, there remains none other joy for me." What responsibilities of the cause can each of us shoulder? How can we conscientiously persevere in our service to his cause? How can we tirelessly serve Baha'u'llah as Abdul Baha did? It is recorded that Abdul Baha said, "In all our endeavors to serve Baha'u'llah, divine confirmations are wholly dependent on action." He said, "The hosts of divine blessings are poised behind this very window, waiting for you to act. If you do not enter the arena of service, of what use are the hosts of heavenly confirmation? If the commander of the army remains idle and passive, how can the army achieve victory?" When we turn our gaze to Abdul Baha, we find that he is a living, breathing tablet of Baha'u'llah. How can we possibly follow his example? But then we find we are not alone. Abdul Baha is always with us. He writes to an early believer who lived in a small rural town in America that as soon as she thought of him, they were together. He said, "Though we cannot see each other physically at this time, thank God the spiritual breath is a messenger between us, which is the means of assuring the heart and rejoicing the spirit." Friends, the House of Justice is acutely aware how difficult it is for us to follow the example of Abdul Baha, and they have gifted us with these beautiful words. May his loved ones, individually and collectively, little by little, day by day, increasingly embody his counsels, to be united in the cause and firm in the covenant, to avoid calumny and never speak ill of others, to see no strangers but regard all as members of one family, to set aside divergent theories and conflicting views and pursue a single purpose and common goal. To ensure that the love of Baha'u'llah has so mastered every organ, part, and limb as to leave no effect from the promptings of the human world. To arise with heart and soul and in one accord to teach the cause. To march in serried lines, pressed together, each supporting the others. To cultivate good character, perseverance, strength, and determination. To know the value of this precious faith, obey its teachings, walk in this road that is drawn straight, and show this way to the people. And friends, just when we start to think, how can we achieve all this? How can we apply all these in our lives? The House of Justice reassures us with these words, that you may fulfill His highest expectations. We pray for each of you.